400 planes vanished in an instant. On June 19, 1944, 400 Japanese fighter planes took to the skies over the Pacific. Only a handful returned. This was not just a battle. It was a massacre. It was such a one-sided conflict that it changed the rules of aerial warfare forever. Most people know about Pearl Harbor, but almost no one remembers the day America wiped out Japan's air power in a matter of hours. Dawn of war. That morning, the Pacific sky was still dark. Beneath a bleeding orange horizon, Task Force 58 was preparing for battle. Engines roared like caged beasts. Men moved across steel decks, shadows in the dawn mist. Every breath smelled of fuel oil and salt water. On the morning of June 19, 1944, history was about to shatter. Captain Jake Morrison boarded a machine he had never flown before, the F6F Hellcat, a fighter born from lessons written in blood. Forged to shatter the myth of Japanese air superiority, 650 caliber machine guns on its wings, a 2,000 horsepower Pratt & Whitney engine. This was America's answer to the Zero. Beyond the aircraft carriers, the sea appeared calm. But this stillness was a lie. Intelligence had warned the Japanese would come with great force. Hundreds of planes, perhaps the largest attack of the Pacific War. An enemy fleet was gathering beyond the horizon. They believed they could break the American fleet. They had no idea. The rise and fall of the Zero. Just 3 years earlier, the story had been very different. In December 1941, Japanese planes had torn through the skies over Pearl Harbor. The Zero, elegant, fast, incredibly agile, was invincible. It outmaneuvered every American plane, climbed faster, hit harder. American pilots called it the Ghost. For young pilots like Jake Morrison, those early years were brutal. He remembered his first mission, flying the underpowered Wildcat. Every maneuver against the Zero felt like suicide. Your only chance was to dive, fire, and hope to escape. American losses were mounting. The lesson was clear. America needed a weapon if it wanted to survive. By mid-1942, Grumman engineers had sketched a new answer. They listened to reports from combat pilots. Every weakness of the Zero was noted. The design philosophy was stark. Forget about outturning the Zero. The new fighter wouldn't be a dancer, it would be a brawler. And so the Hellcat was born. Built like a flying fortress, an armored cockpit, self-sealing fuel tanks, 6 heavy machine guns. By the end of 1943, the first Hellcats reached the fleet. Morrison knew instantly, this was different. The Wildcat was a compromise. The Hellcat was destiny. It climbed with power, dove like a hawk, could take a beating and keep flying. The Zero would already be burning, and most importantly, it was simple to fly. But machines alone don't win wars. Behind every Hellcat was the relentless engine of American industry. While Japan struggled to replace a few dozen planes a month, U.S. factories were producing thousands. Japanese pilots received less than 50 hours of training, while Americans graduated with over 300 hours of cockpit experience. The math was brutal. By 1944, the balance had shifted. For the first time, the Zero was no longer the hunter. It was the hunted. Day of reckoning. The stage was set in the Marianas, small islands in the Pacific, but strategically priceless. Admirals Raymond Spruance and Mark Mitcher assembled Task Force 58, 15 aircraft carriers, hundreds of ships, nearly 1,000 planes, mostly Hellcats. On the other side, Admiral Jisaburo Ozawa was preparing his counterattack, 9 aircraft carriers, 400 aircraft. But his pilots were not the elite of 1941. Some were kids with less than 50 hours of experience. The difference was starkly evident. One side was fighting with machines built for experience, numbers, and dominance. The other with dwindling hope, fragile planes, and a fading myth. The dawn of June 19th arrived with a strange electricity. It was as if the air itself knew history was about to be made. On the USS Independence, Captain Morrison strapped on his flight gear. Around him, the deck was bustling. Mechanics shouted, ammunition crews hauled ammunition belts. At the center stood Colonel William Buck Harrison, commander of Air Group 22, a Midway veteran. He had seen his friends die in burning Wildcats. His eyes were sharp, filled with silent fury. "Gentlemen," he said, "today is reckoning day. Task Force 58 is spread out across 15 miles of ocean. Our battleships are holding the line, our carriers are holding the punch, and you are the shield. The Japanese will throw everything at us. You will throw it back." Hard standing beside Morrison was his wingman, Lieutenant Ryan Cooper, only 21 years old, dark-haired, nerves of steel. He had only flown into combat twice before, but he carried himself like someone twice his age. "Do you think they'll all come at once?" Cooper asked. Morrison gave a half-smile. "If they're smart." But war doesn't breed smarts anymore. It brings mass. And mass was what Task Force 58 had in terrifying abundance. 15 fast carriers, 7 battleships, 8 heavy cruisers, dozens of destroyers. And on top of that, nearly 900 aircraft, most of them Hellcats. The skies massacre. At 8:30, the order came. Launch all fighters. The Hellcats, one by one, shot into the Pacific skies. Morrison felt the jolt as he launched from the catapult. Then sudden freedom. The 2,000-horsepower engine effortlessly pulled him upward. At 15,000 feet, the first reports came in. Multiple enemies. Bear 270. Estimated 80+. The horizon darkened. Shapes appeared. First indistinct, then countless. A black cloud. Zeros, dive bombers, torpedo planes, all heading straight for Task Force 58. "Contact," Major Tom Bradley reported. The Guadalcanal veteran had the calm of a man who had cheated death more than once in his voice. "Remember your training. Boom and zoom. Use your altitude. Never turn with a zero." Morrison positioned his Hellcat over the enemy swarm. Altitude was life. From here, he could dive like a hawk, strike hard, and pull away before the Zero could react. "Hammer flight, follow me." He pushed the throttle forward. The Hellcat roared. Gravity pulled him into the dive. The speedometer shot up to 350 miles per hour. At 1,000 yards, he locked onto a Zero. The pilot never saw him coming. Morrison pulled the trigger. 650 caliber guns roared. Trails of molten fire lit up the sky. The Zero's fragile skin shattered. An explosion in the cockpit. Fire, smoke, silence. The plane broke apart in mid-air. "I got one," Morrison called as he climbed. Cooper's voice followed. "I got a Judy bomber." Its going down the battle spread 30 miles across the sky. Hellcats swept through the formations, struck from above, then climbed. The Zeros spun helplessly, trying to force a dogfight. But the Hellcat was too fast, too powerful. Cooper was targeted by 2 Zeros. "Commander, I'm in trouble!" Morrison dove from above. His shot hit a Zero's engine. Explosion. Black smoke. The second one pulled away, but Cooper was already safe. Fire bloomed everywhere in the sky. Bombers fell in flames. The ocean was filled with wreckage, burning fuel, broken wings. By 10:30, the first Japanese wave had been shattered. Dozens of planes fell burning into the ocean. Fewer reached the American fleet. None got past the anti-aircraft fire. The radio crackled. "New contacts." Larger fleet. Estimated 120 aircraft. Morrison glanced at his fuel gauge. It was still strong. He checked his ammunition. He had over 1,000 rounds left. Cooper's voice came in, tense with adrenaline. "Ready for round 2, Commander?" Morrison was calm. Always. Second and third waves. The second wave came like a storm. 120 Japanese planes. A black tide. Morrison gripped the controls tighter. "Here they come." The Hellcats dove again. 36 blue fighters sliced through the morning sun. Guns blazed. Trails tore through the air. The Japanese fleet broke. Green pilots panicked and scattered the formation. Veterans tried to maintain discipline, but the Hellcats sliced through like lightning. Morrison locked onto a Val dive bomber. One shot, flames engulfed it. The bomb exploded in midair, scattering fire into the sky. Zeros attacked from above, trying to pin the Hellcats in a turning fight. One locked onto Morrison's tail. Gunfire tore through his wing. He turned hard left, diving straight down. The Zero followed. Too close, too eager. At 5,000 feet, Morrison entered a climbing turn. The Hellcat's powerful engine pulled him upward. The Zero tried to match him and stalled. Morrison spun around, hammered down, guns blazing. The Zero exploded in flames. The same story played out in the sky. The Hellcats used altitude, speed, and firepower to tear the enemy apart. The Zeros twisted, turned, climbed. But they couldn't win. Not anymore. By noon, the third attack was seen. 80 more planes, even younger. Pilots barely out of school. Some were so green they struggled to hold the formation. Still, they came. Morrison dove into a Judy bomber, shredding its engine. The pilot bailed out, helplessly drifting toward the sea. The radio crackled with voices. Got one down. Took another Val. They're dropping like flies. The sky itself seemed to be ablaze. Trails of smoke crisscrossed the heavens. Planes nosedived into the sea, exploding into walls of fire. The Pacific became a graveyard of burning wings. At 13:15, the radar picked up the fourth wave. Smaller, 50 planes. But these were not elite squadrons. These were scraps. Training planes, obsolete planes, anything that could fly. Bradley's voice cut off. Gentlemen, finish them. The fourth wave barely reached the Americans. The Hellcats tore them apart with ruthless efficiency. When the wave collapsed, the Japanese had nothing left. And then, silence. Victory and reflections. Morrison leveled off at 12,000 feet, scanning the horizon. The once crowded sky was empty. No more swarms, just smoke, just wreckage. Cooper whispered, Commander, how many do you think we got? Morrison exhaled slowly. Too many to count. Below, the ocean was churning with wreckage. Burning oil slicks stretched for miles. Life rafts floated among the debris, Japanese pilots clinging desperately to survival. But the battle was decided. The air wings were gone. By afternoon, the tally was staggering. Nearly 400 Japanese planes were destroyed. American losses were under 30. The kill ratio was better than 14-1. It wasn't just a victory, it was annihilation. Morrison brought his Hellcat back to Task Force 58. After landing, he just sat there for a moment. Sweat was pouring off him, his heart was pounding. He was alive. The air on the flight deck was electric. Pilots climbed out of their cockpits. Some were grinning, some were dazed, some were so exhausted they could barely walk. The smell of gunpowder clung to their uniforms. Cooper staggered. Commander, I can't even count how many went down today. Morrison looked out to sea. Oil slicks glistened where the planes had vanished. Me neither, he said quietly, but I know what it means. That night, Colonel Harrison addressed the fleet. Gentlemen, today we destroyed the Japanese carrier air force. We didn't weaken it. We didn't crush it. We destroyed it. 400 enemy planes, almost all of them are gone, and our losses didn't exceed 30. The room fell silent. There was a way the numbers cut deeper than words. Morrison thought of 1942. He went back to Pearl Harbor, to the helpless feeling of flying a Wildcat against a Zero that could circle around him. 2 years ago, it was hopelessness. Now, superiority. The legacy. Japan had lost more than aircraft. It had lost what could not be replaced. The veteran air crews who had carried the empire across the Pacific. Replacements would come, but they would be kids with 50 hours of experience. Meanwhile, American factories were producing 2,000 planes a month, new squadrons graduating every week, every pilot trained, equipped, prepared. The war machine had become unstoppable. By midnight, the official count was in. 395 Japanese aircraft destroyed. American losses, 29 planes. It wasn't just numbers. It was a turning point. On June 19, 1944, Japanese naval aviation died. In fire, smoke, and silence. Nearly 400 aircraft lost in a single day. The veteran pilots were gone. A decade of experience was lost. A force that had terrorized the Pacific was shattered forever. The Hellcat won more than a battle. It ended an era. By the war's end, it would be responsible for the destruction of over 5,000 enemy aircraft. Its kill ratio of 19-1 stands as one of the greatest in aviation history. But the numbers tell only part of the story. The true legacy lay in what the Hellcat represented. It was proof that industrial might, training, and adaptability could overcome myth. Proof that the lessons written in blood at Pearl Harbor were not in vain. Proof that America had found its war rhythm. Morrison never forgot that day. The roar of the engines, the glint of the tracks, the young Japanese pilots falling into the sea. He remembers standing on the deck that evening, watching the sunset paint the Pacific a blood-red light. The Hellcats were lined up along the carrier, their wings folded like silent guardians. And yet there was a weight beneath it all. Because Morrison knew those Japanese boys had fought bravely. They had died believing they could turn the tide, and their commanders had thrown them into a hopeless battle. The legacy of the Great Marianas Turkey Hunt was not just victory. It was a warning. War was no longer about a few individuals. It was no longer about individual heroes. It was about systems, machines, nations that could outpace their enemies. And America had become that nation. From that day until the end of the war, American aircraft carriers struck wherever they pleased. Saipan, Guam, Tinian, Iwo Jima, Okinawa, all under the shadow of Hellcat wings. 3 months later, Tokyo itself trembled under American bombs. And when the war ended, it was the Hellcats that guarded the surrender ceremony on the USS Missouri. The Zero was gone. Its reign, its legend, its terror had ended. And the Hellcat remained, the symbol of the Steel Empire, the symbol of a nation that turned the tide, the symbol of the day the sky itself declared the Zero era over. The future belongs to the Hellcat.